In this anime, we follow the story of a young woman who, before everyone at a grand ball, is unjustly accused by her fiancé of breaking off their engagement to marry another man. None of the guests could have imagined that, shortly after, they would all end up being beaten. And before the revenge begins, the opening scene appears. The story starts with Scarlet. In the middle of the ballroom, the prince, her fiancé, publicly announces the end of their engagement. Moreover, he declares that he will marry someone else. The most surprising thing is that the guests react by applauding. However, that engagement had been arranged between the royal family and the duchy even before the two were born. Therefore, it could not be cancelled so easily. So, the cruel prince decides to falsely accuse her of several crimes. He claims that the protagonist had tortured a new student at the academy. None of it is true. In fact, it was the first time Scarlet had ever seen that girl. The shameless prince keeps insisting on his lies, saying that she scribbled in the novice's notebook, locked her in a bathroom, and even pushed her down the stairs. Tired of it all, Scarlet accepts the cancellation of the engagement. And if she was truly seen as the villain, she no longer intended to restrain herself. Before leaving, she makes only one last request. It is not money, nor jewels. Her final wish is simple: to land a solid punch on the boy's face. And before we can witness that sweet revenge, the story returns to the past. From a very young age, Scarlet had shown pleasure in hitting people. Not even a week had gone by before she had already beaten another child to tears. However, she never resorted to violence without reason. She believed her actions were for the sake of good and to correct the world. What her brother saw when he entered the house was Scarlet covered in splashes of blood, wearing a wide smile, just a short time before the ball that would mark her debut in society. She needed to learn to restrain her impulses and behave like a lady. On that same day, the infamous prince crossed her path. He treated her with disdain and even tried to use her as his assistant. He was the kingdom's second prince and, by royal arrangement, her fiancé. From that moment, everything began. The miserable man started tormenting her in the worst possible ways. Scarlet's father could do nothing, since the deal with the royal family prevented him from breaking the engagement. With no alternatives, she was forced to endure it. As the years passed, upon turning 15, Scarlet entered the Royal Academy of Nobles. There, she was the pride of the special class, recognized as the Ice Rose. The bastard soon discovered that she was obliged to support him within the academy and decreed that from then on, she would be his servant. She had already developed nerves of steel to remain calm, but at lunchtime, he cruelly complained, accusing her of wasting time instead of paying for his meal. He threatened to punish her if she continued mocking him, even frightening her friends. He told Solas she had been acting too proud for getting high grades. While the prince had been sent to the regular class, Scarlet remained in the special one. That difference infuriated him, and he promised to cut off her silver hair as revenge. Irritated, Scarlet thought that if he did that, she would tell her father and the engagement would be cancelled. But he provoked her, saying that her father was nothing more than an obedient dog, incapable of acting. The young woman would live as a slave for the rest of her life. At that moment, she could no longer stand it. Before her anger exploded, the first prince appeared. Swiftly, he put his brother in his place. Cowardly, the second prince asked a friend to attack his brother in his stead, but no one dared, since both were royalty. The big question was whom the blonde prince had truly protected. Perhaps he had realized Scarlet was about to retaliate. He observed her from the top of a tree while reading. During lunch, he avoided the classroom because he was always surrounded by flatterers, which bored him. The kingdom had two princes, the blonde one, the first heir, and the second, the future king. However, since the eldest could not stand injustice, he began to bother corrupt nobles, who started supporting his brother, trying to make him king. Because of that, rival groups fought every day at the academy. From then on, the blonde prince began to attend class more often. To him, Scarlet was something far more interesting than any book. Instead of feeling joy, she was irritated. In the exams, the prince had achieved first place. That had never happened before. Scarlet had always been at the top. Even if she scored 99 in magic, they never allowed her to reach 100. They claimed flaws in her sword technique or in her magic circles, always based on personal judgment. Meanwhile, the blonde prince achieved the maximum score and, moreover, approached her to whisper that the test had been easy. Scarlet took it personally and swore to surpass him. In the next test, she achieved first place. The prince congratulated her. Watching her sword training in secret was fascinating to him. They said that, just to see her happy, he even made mistakes on purpose in some exams. Realizing that, Scarlet decided she would no longer fall for his provocations. She began ignoring him, even though she was tired of his constant presence. Strangely, she no longer encountered the second prince. Since being demoted to the regular class, they had not met again. Perhaps the blonde one had started bothering her precisely to keep his brother away. One day, he commented, almost as a confession, that he found her silver hair beautiful. He also said he had never met anyone so interesting. To him, Scarlet was like a rare and exotic creature. Although he had tested her patience countless times, he still insisted that he wanted to make her his fiancé, promising her a better life. She rejected him immediately. At that moment, all the anger and stress accumulated over the years reached the limit. Scarlet began dreaming of punching both princes. Everything she had held back for years finally exploded. With each injustice she endured, her desire to fight back grew stronger. As a future member of the royal family, she had endured everything. But now it was different. She intended to crush them all. Let me burn, Troy, she thought. She was the furious lady. In the midst of the blows, she discovered that they were involved in slave trafficking. Finally, she asked for one last dance. One by one, all of them fell. The blonde prince, curious, asked why she had used those attacks. Scarlet replied that those men had committed terrible crimes and, instead of repenting, had laughed about them. So she decided to punish them with her own hands. The truth was simpler. They had irritated her, and that was why she beat them up. The prince burst into laughter, eager to always see her in her true form, fighting. Her brother, however, was in shock, not knowing what to do, fearing for the family's reputation, preserved for a decade. Soon after, Scarlet fainted. When she woke up 3 days later, her maid tried to attack her. With a single blow, Scarlet threw her against the wall. During the time she was unconscious, the doctor confessed he did not know if she would ever wake again. Her brother, distressed, thought she would never open her eyes again. Given what had happened, the royal family finally agreed to cancel the engagement, and everyone approved. The infamous prince, accused of involvement in human trafficking, was disinherited. Scarlet, however, received no punishment. After all, the royal family could not afford to lose her. Until things settled, she would remain single. Outside, her fame grew. People said that a young woman, using only her fists, had defeated corrupt nobles. The people began to call her the Bloody Lady. However, many of those who had been arrested belonged to the royal council. This would bring about major changes. The prime minister, being the leader, should be punished, and there remained the suspicion that someone, hidden in the shadows, had manipulated the wretched prince. It was because of this that a plan arose to overthrow the corrupt nobles. To carry it out, the intelligence service was formed, and the one who infiltrated it was precisely the person who had captured the wretch. She apologized for her actions. She had intended to punish him with blows, but ended up giving only a light slap. He had already extended his hand many times, and for that reason, she held no grudge at all. Finally, the day of her freedom had arrived. Although she did not believe that the prime minister was the true mastermind behind everything, the truth showed that he had sent the maid with the intention of eliminating her. Only her clothes remained in that place. He was a fierce man, and she thought that if he wished to continue harassing her, he should at least do it in human form. He was a man marked by the seal of slavery, condemned to obey his master without question. If they free him, he will reveal everything he knows, she thought. His power consisted of reversing time in his own body, something that required caution. Everyone was born under the blessing of one of the countless gods inhabiting the world. Most only discovered who had blessed them in the final days of their lives. However, there were those who perceived early on the gift they had received and learned to use it. And this gift was called a blessing. What he had done was return her body to its original state. His power was to manipulate time, and for that reason, the royal family wanted to keep him in the country. The problem was that the ability drained his vital energy. If used excessively, it could be fatal. At the ball, what he had used was acceleration. which was why he had fainted. This was a carefully kept secret. Deep down, everything became clear. The Prime Minister had been the contractor. His orders were to torture and eliminate the protagonist simply because she had harmed his son, one of the attendees at the ball. His mission was not only to assassinate but also to spy. Several men like him had been sent to the nobles' houses to discover their weaknesses and, in this way, force them to buy slaves. Knowing this, she decided that she would confront the minister. It's necessary to have fun. Striking those who irritate you is how a lady should act, she thought ironically. The minister usually appeared once a month at an auction, and luckily, that would happen in just a week. He promised to help her. He had only obeyed the orders because of the mark that enslaved him. Now, if he could see her take revenge, he would be more than satisfied. He would accompany her to the capital. The blonde man, who had overheard the entire conversation, also decided to join the group. He could act alone, but he chose to travel to observe society up close. When he completed his training at the academy, he would have to prepare to assume the throne and could never leave the palace. Therefore, while he still had freedom, he wanted to know the real state of the nation. However, deep down, the true reason was not to lose something so entertaining. During one of their stops, some criminals tried to rob him. He defeated them easily with just a few blows. One of them begged for mercy and ended up revealing the intermediary's location. Even so, the blonde left him unconscious. Instead of intervening, he simply enjoyed the spectacle before him. He decided he would deal with that person himself, but he would do it peacefully. Over time, he managed to discover the address. He swore he had only pressed the informant a little. Now, they needed to devise a strategy to infiltrate the auction. Thus, the first 2 chapters came to a close. Despite all the investigation they had conducted, Scarlet ended up encountering a nobleman named Lord Saturn, who, unlike the intermediary she sought, was named Junk. He told her that a lady as distinguished as herself did not need to deal with someone like Junk, as people like that were not worthy of her position, and that she could approach him for any matter. Scarlet realized that this slave trade and illegal dealings were conducted with total brazenness in a city full of royal guards. She made it clear she did not want merely to buy slaves, but also to participate in an auction that would happen soon. Saturn explained that not just anyone could attend that auction. First, one had to be known in this dark circle, someone who had bought or sold at least 5 slaves. Scarlet tried to convince him by saying she would pay whatever he asked to participate. But Saturn did not seem interested in money, as he had known Nanaka for quite some time. He had noticed that Nanaka was a beastman, and such beings were rare. One reason he spoke with Scarlet was precisely the fact that having a beastman as a servant showed she also dealt with dark activities. What he did not know was that all of that was part of Nanaka's plan, who had already foreseen every step. Saturn asked if she could go to the auction being presented as his relative, someone close, with his recommendation. Scarlet understood that if she handed over Nanaka, it would only be so he could be auctioned, and she agreed. Throughout the conversation, she had to restrain the urge to punch him, but maintained her composure. Upon leaving the mansion, it was evident that Scarlet and Nanaka's plan had gone as expected. Although the situation could become dangerous, as Nanaka would have to stay with them and could be mistreated. Even so, he was willing to face everything, as he had tried to take Scarlet's life in the past, and this was his way of redeeming himself. Tired, Nanaka began to weaken, as beastmen were nocturnal creatures, and upon falling asleep, assumed his true form. Scarlet held him and took him to the inn where they were staying. Julius was also there and praised her, saying he did not believe she could resolve everything without resorting to her fists, something Nanaka had also mentioned. Scarlet did not like hearing that, as she knew how impatient she was, but admitted she had controlled herself. Julius asked what she would do next, and Scarlet replied she needed fresh air. He decided to accompany her, which irritated her even more. As they walked among the city stalls, vendors offered everything to Scarlet, and Julius ended up buying several things, including an apple pie that came with an apple as a gift. At the end of the walk, Scarlet asked if he was still following the same direction as her, but Julius confessed, laughing, that he had no destination, only wanting to go to her farm. Scarlet banged on the wall, imagining it was the prince's face. Even furious, she let him feed her the pie, which she found delicious. Julius joked that this would not be enough for her to forgive him, but by giving her his own slice as well, he managed to soften her anger. The two sat on a bench and began talking about life. Julius mentioned that he knew the city well and liked the place because, when studying at the academy, he used to skip classes to wander there. Scarlet said she had visited that market a few times, but always in a rush, buying the meals Prince Kyle requested. Now, observing everything calmly, she found the environment lively. Julius then remembered his childhood, when everyone fawned over him for being the future king. He found it all boring, until the day he met Scarlet at a party. She was being teased and mistreated by her brother Kai. Julius approached and asked why she did not cry and tell everything to her father. Scarlet looked at him coldly, with a dangerous smile, and replied not to make her laugh, as she was not afraid of Kai. Julius was surprised and, since then, found her fascinating. In that tedious world, Scarlet had become what kept him interested in life. At an unexpected moment, Julius approached and kissed her on the cheek, saying he knew what he felt for her was not ordinary love. But even so, she was what he valued most. Scarlet was stunned, and even later, at the inn, continued thinking about his words, wondering if it was merely a tease to amuse him. The next day, Scarlet returned to Lord Saturn to close the deal. She would hand over Nanaka and, in return, receive the time and place of the auction. Saturn wanted to confirm if Nanaka was truly a beastman and asked him to transform. After seeing it, he called one of his slaves, a hybrid between human and beast, resembling a werewolf. The man was aggressive and thought Scarlet was the new slave. Scarlet intervened, stating she would take care of him. As her servant Donovan had discipline issues, Eyre tried to warn that he could become violent. But Donovan could not even take the whip from her hands. Scarlet asked if he would also be sold at the auction, and Saturn replied no, as he was only his bodyguard and overseer. Free to act, Scarlet punished him with the same whip and struck him forcefully, throwing him out the window. After that, she treated Nanaka's wounds a little and promised to return to get him. She tried to pay for window damages, but Saturn, frightened, refused any payment. He had understood that no one should touch a hair of Nanaka. When Scarlet left the place, the unexpected happened. She encountered her brother Leonardo. Yes, Prince Julius was also involved. After all, he had discovered what was happening in the city and was not happy with the situation. At least they managed to find out the auction date, but Leonardo worried more about his little sister's safety, did not want her getting into dangerous situations, and also wanted to preserve a bit of the family reputation, as it was not good for Scarlet to go around confronting nobles. While they talked, Scarlet reflected on how her own life had been isolated. She realized that she had lived in a bubble, without any notion of the evil present in the world. How could it be so simple for nobles to become corrupt and sell slaves without the slightest embarrassment? The young woman came to a funny conclusion for herself. She loved confronting bloated nobles without any difficulty, and, more than that, being the daughter of the most powerful duke in the kingdom. All nobles who appeared after her had no authority over her. She could act freely, and Julius was there, supporting her, agreeing with each of her thoughts. Leonardo then explained that Godwin himself would be responsible for conducting the auction. Unfortunately, the event was about to happen, and they needed to quickly define the action plan. Obviously, Leonardo wanted Scarlet to return to the palace, but she was not willing to step away from this mission. She would not simply stay out. Moreover, he mentioned that it was not only nobles from Palestau who had direct connections to the situation, but that Godwin possibly had relations with the Vanish Empire, an empire with which the kingdom had been at war for a period and that now supposedly maintained friendlier treaties. There were rumors that Godwin maintained contact with a faction of that empire, known for flying on dragons, the feared Crimson Sky Dragons. Then, everyone headed to Godwin's house, where the man was furious with everything Scarlet had done that day. She had publicly revealed the entire slavery issue, and for that, he was determined to retaliate. Godwin was so angry that he ordered one of the Vanish Empire's allies to eliminate Scarlet. Meanwhile, Terenessa reappeared, bringing disturbing news. She informed Godwin that the goddess Palmia had entrusted him with a magical artifact, an apparently harmless gift. However, upon analyzing it, it revealed itself to be a powerful weapon, capable of taking down formidable enemies, and, clearly, the reference was Scarlet. Hours later, night falls on Saturn's mansion. Scarlet arrives wearing an elegant dress that highlights her figure, and Saturn greets her with forced courtesy and hands her a mask for the eyes, a detail that sets the clandestine tone of the night. But, in her mind, Scarlet knows this slave auction is about to end, and not exactly with a bidding war. As they walk toward the mansion entrance, he explains that the auction is about to begin, and that only a handful of intelligence agents led by Leonardo will manage to infiltrate unarmed to avoid raising suspicion. He then mentions that Godwin's ties with the Crimson Sky Dragons make the mission dangerous, but he is confident that Scarlet, with her brute strength, can handle him unarmed. He also says that, if she manages to dismantle the auction, her reputation may change from a bloodthirsty lady to something more heroic, like the patriotic Iron Fist Lady. Meanwhile, outside the mansion, Leonardo waits with the royal knights, and one of them informs him that everything is ready. They are just waiting for Giulio's signal. At that moment, Leonardo recalls the conversation at home, where he allowed Scarlet to infiltrate, but on the condition of avoiding unnecessary violence. Although she nodded with a smile, Leonardo cannot avoid a knot in his stomach. Fearing that his sister will not keep her promise, he sighs, praying that, for once, Scarlet behaves. Then, inside, the party is in full swing. Masked nobles converse animatedly, discussing which slaves they plan to buy. Some want salty creatures, others elves, and one mentions an event where he will make slaves fight as a spectacle. At that moment, Scarlet accidentally bumps into a masked man whose voice sounds familiar, though she cannot identify him. Before she can think further about the matter, an announcer steps onto the stage, beginning the auction. The first to be presented is a one-winged bird girl, with a vacant gaze. Seeing her, Scarlet feels a burning fury in her chest, but restrains herself, knowing she needs to wait for the right moment. At that moment, Julius appears by her side, asking if she found Godwin. Scarlet replies that not yet, but has an idea where he might be. As they walk among the nobles, Julius mentions that the royal knights are on standby, waiting for their signal, and jokes that, if she does not hurry, her prize will be stolen. With a sparkle in her eyes, Scarlet proposes a deal. She will handle Godwin if he delays the attack. Julius agrees, but in return makes an unexpected request, that she swears loyalty not to the crown, but to him personally. He comes so close it seems he will kiss her, and Scarlet, although annoyed by the pressure, reluctantly agrees, murmuring to herself that this hypocritical prince always annoys her. Julius asks her to guide him to Godwin, eager to see the spectacle Scarlet promises to give. Meanwhile, in the mansion basement, a little blonde girl cries, begging them not to take her mother. However, the seller rudely ignores her, and Nanako whispers comforting words to her, assuring her that both she and her mother will soon be free. In her mind, she fully trusts Scarlet to keep her promise. Upstairs, Scarlet and Julius advance through a corridor, passing several guards that Scarlet neutralizes with a sleep spell. Impressed, Julius jokes about her skill, reminding her that he ranked first in the magic exam at the academy, and Scarlet says there is no need to remind him. Suddenly, they encounter a group of armed men wearing gloves. Scarlet decides to warm up before facing the main course. With quick movements, she delivers punches that send the men to the ground, one after another, until she throws the last directly into the room where Godwin is. Scarlet enters, confronting Godwin and his son Hein, who recognize her instantly. Furious, Hein attempts to attack her with a lightning spell, but Julius uses a ring that nullifies the magic, leaving Hein stunned. Seeing the ring, Godwin pales, recognizing the Imperial Seal, an artifact only a royal family member can wield. For a moment, he doubts that Julius is really the prince, but his nervous allies insist he is an imposter, refusing to accept the truth. Godwin orders an attack, and Donovan, the former adventurer, appears in his beast form, ready to invade. Before Donovan can move, the masked man with whom Scarlet had collided earlier intervenes, blocking him with a sword. Julius identifies him as Sig, scolding him for being late. In turn, Sig accuses him of deliberately confusing him, and Scarlet, realizing he was the stranger of the group, wastes no time, quickly knocking Sig to the ground and telling him not to steal her fight. she designates Donovan as her opponent, making clear that the other nobles are hers. She grabs Donovan and, with tremendous strength, spins him like a tornado, throwing several of Godwin's allies back into the ballroom, causing absolute chaos and joy for Scarlet. Minutes later, Leonardo bursts into the room. Horrified to see a pile of unconscious nobles in a corner, he confronts Scarlet, asking how she could have caused such confusion, and she says she only hit them with the back of her hand, without killing them. Exasperated, Leonardo tells her that her hands have no backhand and are lethal on both sides. As the nobles flee terrified, Julius mentions to Scarlet that they can no longer delay the attack. But she insists that she has not finished with Godwin yet. Confused, Leonardo asks what they are talking about, and Julius explains that they made an oath. With that, Scarlet confirms that she swore loyalty to Julius, leading Leonardo to misinterpret everything, becoming excited at the idea that his sister had found love. Before Scarlet could clarify the misunderstanding, Julius released a firework, signaling the royal knights to enter. Then, using a clairvoyant spell, Leonardo located Godwin and Hein climbing the central staircase to the roof, where a dragon approached to rescue them. As they ran, Julius confirmed that the rumors about Godwin's ties with the Crimson Sky Dragons were true, and, if he escaped, Vanish would be out of reach. Without hesitation, Scarlet took off her shoes, saying she needed to run urgently. She asked Leonardo to look after Nanaka and the other slaves and activated her acceleration spell at triple power, moving at superhuman speed. Climbing the stairs, she felt her body's weight resent the effort, but did not stop. Determined not to let Godwin escape, she bursts onto the roof through a window, just in time to see Godwin and Hein facing a soldier mounted on a dragon. Furious, Godwin orders the soldier to bow and kneel, but the soldier orders his dragon to attack. At that moment, Scarlet intervenes, stopping the dragon's tail with one hand and stepping on Hein, immobilizing him. Godwin pales, but the soldier, impressed with her strength, introduces himself as Flam, the heir prince of Vanish, and, with a smile, proposes marriage to her, saying he is in love with her strength. However, Scarlet rejects him and throws him to the ground. When the dragon attempts to attack her, she subdues it easily, holding it still while encouraging it to behave, but Flam does not give up and continues praising her strength, insisting that she join him. Already fed up, Scarlet attacks him again, but he reveals that his body is invincible thanks to metallization, the blessing of Meteoro, the god of steel. He says that her fists cannot hurt him and asks her to stay still while he deals with Godwin, and Scarlet, with a mischievous smile, pretends to approach him as if to kiss him. But, in a quick movement, she grabs him and knees him in the face. With that, Flame murmurs that he never imagined she would use something as primitive as a concussion to knock him down. Despite the pain, he insists that Scarlet does not belong to a kingdom of the weak and asks her to go with him. And Scarlet, no longer impatient, activates acceleration again and throws him into the sky, waving to him in farewell. She turns to Godwin, who, terrified, tries to apologize, saying that everything was because of the son's tantrum and that he used Terranessa to manipulate Kyle and break Scarlet's engagement. With a cold look, she deduces that Godwin was behind the humiliation she suffered at the ball, and Godwin, desperate to save himself, offers information in exchange for her freedom, revealing that Terranessa is not of this world, but rather a human transported by a goddess from elsewhere. Confused, Scarlet freezes, processing the revelation about Terranessa. The scene changes and shows the man heading toward the Beastman's cell, believing that as long as everyone stayed together, they could still overcome any obstacle. However, several people appear behind him, and he goes into shock. The focus then shifts to the protagonist, who asks if Lady Terranessa would be a human reincarnated from another world. The man confirms that she is. That's enough for Scarlet, who immediately wants to know if she can punch him in the face already. He starts backing away quickly, asking her to wait a moment, and if there's something she would like to have. With her authority, she could obtain anything. Scarlet understands the situation and, at that instant, wishes for a punching bag similar to the one he owns. The man is surprised, starts laughing, and asks if that would be enough, but soon realizes she's talking about him. Activating her overlock, Scarlet explains that in that space she created a world that moves at 1/100th of normal speed, and only she can move freely. As she strikes the man, she explains that one punch is for the people of the kingdom, exploited by him for so long. Another is for the slaves he mercilessly tormented. The next is for Nanaka, whose life he treated as a toy. The following one is for trying to eliminate her. And finally, there's a punch simply because she wants to hit him. She finishes with a precise kick right in the center of his face, thanking him afterward for what was served. After defeating him, Scarlet is sure Leonardo will worry about her. She used all her blessing, which stained her silver hair that he admires, turning it black. Near fainting, Julius appears at the scene and starts healing her. He notices that it doesn't seem like a human fought in that space. Julius asks if she can move, and Scarlet replies that, at that moment, she can't even move her fingers. Suddenly, her friends arrive with her brother to check on her condition. When she says she's fine, Scarlet asks where Godwin is. She explains that he was pushed into the wall by the punch he received. Suddenly, Godwin appears armed, demanding that she die. As he fires, Julius steps in the way, and while falling, asks if she never finishes the job completely. The man smiles, satisfied for not having killed Scarlet, but for having eliminated Prince Julius. Scarlet dashes forward in the blink of an eye and punches him in the face. When he falls to the ground, she grabs him by the collar, but he keeps laughing, claiming her punches would never work against him. Noticing his tie, Scarlet sees something hidden beneath it and decides to remove it. He begs her to wait. It's the pendant of the young saint, who holds the power of the goddess Palmia. Scarlet decides to strike back with her own fist, hitting his face again. She asks if he understands what he's done. A scoundrel attempting to take the life of Prince Julius is unforgivable. He pleads to be spared, but she would never allow such a thing. Scarlet then punches the man in the stomach, sending him flying away. She tells Julius she sent him along to another world and avenged him, but he says he's still alive, only buried ahead of time. Everyone asks him never to risk his life again, warning about the importance of taking care of himself. Julius realizes he lost the chance to die and asks if she's sad. Scarlet replies that she's happy he's fine. At dawn, everyone is arrested. Even after taking a severe beating, Godwin still survives, proving his endurance. He looks at Scarlet and asks if she managed to accomplish what she wanted, receiving a confirmation. The scene changes to the boy Scarlet hit, stuck in a tree. When the tree is kicked, he falls, and a disciple asks if he's okay. The boy says every bone in his body is broken, but the disciple doubts it, since his body is tougher than any metal in the world. He explains that he was stuck in the tree because he was thrown from another kingdom, using all his blessing to survive. They then take the dragon back to the kingdom. The boy asks the master if he enjoyed the toy he wished for, getting a yes, and can't wait for the next meeting. The scene cuts to the city, where people receive the news of the arrest of the evil minister Godwin, celebrating the end of the corrupt thanks to Scarlet. Everyone starts calling her the Iron Fist savior of the kingdom. The girls are impressed by the situation, surrounded by reporters interested in Scarlet, her favorite books, and even her pets. They imagine a white, elegant cat as her pet, but in truth, it's a dragon. A butler appears bringing the requested item, a punching bag with Godwin's face. Scarlet decides she'll sell it since Julius will advertise it. The man comments that Nanaka watches her, longing for attention, calling the boy to receive some affection. The maids ask for her help in preparing for the visit, and he walks away. The scene changes to Terraneza going to the prison. Guards try to stop her, but she hypnotizes them with a spell as she walks. Her dream is to achieve a happy ending and win the most handsome prince of the kingdom, the conclusion she wants to create. Godwin appears, saying he was expecting her and will serve if needed. The girl thanks him for having removed Dianism in favor of Palmianism, casts a spell on the guards, and leaves a potion for him to drink. As she leaves, Scarlet is taken away from the spotlight. The poison kills the man. The royal court receives the news, and Julius can't believe in a death by poisoning. Leonardo reports that his sister Terraneza is missing. Julius only wants to understand who Terraneza is and the motives behind the Palmianism religion. It's explained that the kingdom has two main religious organizations. One has been gaining followers, especially among authorities, and Palmianism became the official faith, worshipping the goddess of beauty and love, led by a wealthy but not very devout merchant Nanaka notices the connection to Godwin, sensing corruption. The other religion is Dianism, founded along with the kingdom, venerating Saint Diana, a young girl with the power of exorcism. Leonardo doesn't see it as concrete, but most people believe it's more appropriate. Julius explains that not everyone sees Dianism in a positive light. Soon, the ceremony of Dianism will take place, which may be complicated and represent a challenge for Scarlet. Julius wants to know how Scarlet is, and Leonardo replies that she's much better. Just yesterday, the girl said she would hunt alone to feed her dragon. Julius realizes that Scarlet truly is an intriguing woman. With her by his side, he feels he will never be bored. Perhaps, at some point, he'll consider truly asking for her hand in marriage. Leonardo asks him not to make jokes. They've already made their vows and are about to marry. He only asks that nothing be revealed before the official announcement, which he believes will come soon. Julius observes everything and wishes to know Leonardo's reaction upon discovering it was all a misunderstanding. He then decides it's time to meet his beloved. The scene cuts to Scarlet's friends, who are waiting for her. When one of them looks up and sees a dragon, she assumes it's an enemy and launches an attack against the creature. Upon entering, Scarlet realizes they mistook Rex for an enemy. They confirm it, commenting that it's not common to see a dragon in the city. Scarlet feels happy that they haven't changed. She wants to hear the news. One friend explains that during the month Scarlet was away, she had absolute power over the academy dormitory. But another friend disagrees, saying that's a lie, since the girl has been bored without her rival. Besides, she bought healing potions all over the city. The girl gets irritated and threatens to use ice magic if she keeps talking. The other explains she was only waiting for Scarlet to get better before cleaning the room. Since they share the space, one of them reveals she wants to get married and wishes to find someone who would give his life for her. Scarlet immediately thinks of Prince Julius. Another friend asks if she also expects to find someone to marry. Suddenly, the prince appears, and both are fascinated. Julius asks if he can borrow Scarlet for a moment. They agree without hesitation. As he leads her away, Julius wants to know if she is aware that Godwin was poisoned to death. Scarlet confirms she is. Julius investigated Terraneza, as reported by her, but Kyle knew nothing about her. With no further clues, she remains missing. Scarlet understands that she cannot discuss this in front of her friends. Looking at Scarlet, Julius asks if this isn't the conversation she wanted to have. Noticing her hair still hasn't returned to normal, she explains she doesn't intend to visit the hot springs, as they say they relieve the physical and mental stress caused by blessings. Julius admits he doesn't want to lose Scarlet. She replies that she doesn't want to lose him either and asks that he not do anything as reckless as that day, risking his life for her. Scarlet feels happy to be considered important by the royal family. She acknowledges that the blessing of the goddess of time, Cronoa, is valuable. But before she can finish speaking, he interrupts her and asks if he may take a rose. Scarlet doesn't mind. When he picks up the rose, Julius asks if she remembers the day they went together to the Granhilda shopping district. Julius recalls that his parents once went there, disguised as commoners, to enjoy some time together. Every day, his father showered his mother with gifts and marriage proposals, as countless as the stars. The mother, tired of it, received a special gift. It wasn't a crown or a jewel, but a handmade crown of roses, given with words of love and care. Upon receiving the crown, Scarlet feels the world shine and fill with colors once gray and dull, and realizes her reality has come alive, with a veil of fresh blood. Moreover, she feels that her heart has been stolen. Julius asks if she wants to stay with him forever, together with her toy. Scarlet becomes serious and asks if he's being serious. He confirms, explaining that he likes his toy. Then he asks if she felt any hope that it could all be real. Even more irritated, Scarlet asks if he wants to be sent flying, thus ending another episode.